Beach FM, locals talking to locals.
Beach FM 106.3, my very great pleasure now to welcome from that exotic location of Ithica, Penelope Haines. Good morning and welcome to you.
Good morning, John.
I do hope you've got a glass of wine in your hand and you're gazing out the window.
Yes, well, possibly not at this hour of the morning, but yeah.
I better explain that because Penelope claims to use the subterfuge of being an author as an excuse to gaze out the window with a glass of wine in her hand. It sounds like a lot more work than that, Penelope.
Well, yes, except it's purely voluntary work, of course, when you're a writer or any sort of artist, so it's a pleasure as much as anything else. And
you're 4 books in now. I mean, this is becoming quite a thing, isn't it? Could I ask you about Ithica Publishing? Is that your company?
That is mine, yes.
So you do the publishing and you worry over getting the thing printed. Do you design the book covers as well?
No, I don't. I have a very, very talented designer who happens to work in the office, and she does the covers, and she does a superb job, and she's also responsible for doing all the actual typesetting, formatting inside the actual book itself, which is because you don't, I mean, an author writes a book, creates the story and things, but it takes a team to actually make a book, you know, the cover, the print, the style, and all those things. So, yeah.
So do you have an editor as well?
I get all my books, I use freelance editors to do, and yeah, so they go through with a fine-tooth comb and tell me, you know, where I've gone wrong, and we sort it out and go from there.
Now, Blood Never Lies is a substantial tome. It's near enough to 500 pages, so, you know, that is a substantial amount of work, many, many thousands of words involved in this. But it's not just the words, it's the research that goes into it as well, isn't it, Penelope?
Yeah, it's the research was always interesting. The idea came to me, really, because my husband and I exchanged DNA testing kits one Christmas 3 or 4 years ago.
Yes.
And the results came back. And mine was very straightforward, just sort of 100% Irish blood, back as far as you could go. But my husband's came back a highly exotic mix, which included 58% Scandinavian, although he was English born and bred, and as far as he knew, you know, that there had never been any sort of foreign intervention in the bloodline. And of course, as soon as we mentioned Scandinavian and British bloodlines, I went, Vikings.
Absolutely.
Who can resist the Viking thing? And so the story started from there, and then of course there was the research into Vikings and also into the DNA side of things.
Absolutely. So you've got the Viking part of it. Basically, this is a story about a girl rescuing a Viking from the sea about 1,000 years ago. And we launch into a tale of love and violence. And it comes up to the 21st century as well. So you're spanning a bit of territory here, Penelope, aren't you?
Yeah, well, with the DNA testing, the thing that intrigued me is if you go to the doctor and they'll sort of say any history of diabetes in your family or whatever the issue is that you're discussing, and people will go yes or no, but usually that's only based on, you know, mum, dad, grandma, grandpa, and if you're really lucky, you know, a generation beyond that. But in fact, all our DNA and all our inheritance, of course, comes from centuries and centuries and centuries. And recent studies have actually shown that our DNA, our basic DNA, can get affected by experiences that people had. So I wanted to explore a dramatic event 1,000 years ago and how that's still tangled into the DNA of people in the 21st century.
Goodness me. So events affect DNA, the chemistry on which we're based.
It doesn't affect the basic DNA sequence. That's yours, you know, the double helix. But the chemicals and proteins associated with your DNA have come with a whole lot of organ stops on them, if you like, which get pulled out and pulled in, switched off, switched in, and it's the switching off and the switching on of these various chemical attributes that make each one of us the individual we are. And those organ stops, for want of a better analogy,
yes.
Can be affected by traumatic events, wars, famines, and all sorts of things. So when you see refugees, for example, it's not just the people who are the refugees that will feel the effect of that trauma. It'll go on through generations because it will get carried through.
See, the subtitle of your book is Forged by History, Bound by Time. And I can understand why now. This is quite fascinating. So you've come up with this basic idea based on the analysis of your husband's blood. And by the way, there's nothing the matter with 100% Irish blood, because I can share that wonderful title myself. So
you go.
There we go. And of course, the Irish love the stories. Has this always been in your blood? Were you always destined to be an author?
Yes, I think so. I was a reader, a chronic addicted reader right from the get-go.
Difficult to get you to make your bed and do the chores around the house. You just wanted to have your nose in a book.
Well, I was still a Narnia. I didn't have the time.
Indeed, yes, I can understand that. I can really empathise with that as well. So do you believe that you've got to be a really voracious reader before you can become a writer?
I don't know that there's a necessity to, but I think there is a normal progression from reader to writer. And in fact, I think Isabel Allende said something along the lines of, she started writing because she wanted to write the books that she wanted to read. So
yes.
That's the simplest way of achieving them.
Yes.
So I think readers tend to become writers. But yeah, it's a form of creativity, and people are creative in lots of different ways.
Absolutely. Is there any drawbacks or any advantages with being a writer living in Ithica?
Well, I think there are different advantages. It's an enormous hotbed of talent right through the Kapiti Coast. And I mean, just up our way, we've got Renee Taylor, yes. Patricia Grace, and
yes.
enormous number of people who are writing and painting and things like that. So yes, I think it's part of a very dynamic, creative community. Also, of course, I'm out in the country. It's beautiful, and all that tends to invest itself in your writing as well, so that adds to the flavour of how you write.
Indeed. And so here it is, Blood Never Lies. It's the latest from Penelope Haines. And I'm quite intrigued to see that you've put so much effort into it becoming a paper book rather than an e-book. Is paper still the way to go, Penelope?
It's also published as an e-book on Amazon. So it's available for Kindles and all those sorts of things through Amazon. I'm an e-book convert, largely because our house is so papered with wall-to-wall books that I had to stop purchasing them and move to the digital version. But yes, I think there'll always be a place. Yes, I think there'll always be a place for paper books. There's something very satisfying about them.
And I imagine it's quite a financial commitment to get into the paper side of things as well. So obviously this has become an industry. Is it fair to say it's a cottage industry, or is it bigger than that?
Oh, I think it's much bigger than that. I mean, the world is populated with millions of people writing and putting books up on Amazon.
Yes.
And Amazon, in fact, does print on demand, so that you don't have the massive commitment of having to upfront order 500 copies of a book. You can order 4 copies of a book if it suits you.
Yes.
And yeah, it's absolutely overwhelming. The trick, I think, for any writer faced with that sort of competition in the marketplace is that the work you put out, you have to be very responsible for its quality all the way through.
Yes, indeed. Well, which obviously you are. Congratulations. I'm absolutely thrilled to see it working so well. Penelope Haines, it's been a delight. Thank you so much for joining us this morning here on Beach FM.
John, thank you very, very much indeed for having me. I hope your listeners enjoy reading the book.
106.3 Beach FM.